So here we have the Milwaukee m18 push lawnmower, and for me, this black motor housing right here, I had hit a tree stump and it ended up cracking. Once that cracked, the blade became off tilt and actually caught on the inside of the deck and basically stopped working. So it was very difficult to gain access to remove it. That's what this video is about. Maybe show you a few things that you don't have to remove and things that you do have to remove. So the main thing is to get this shroud here, which basically houses all your electrical wires, your batteries, things like that, off of the actual deck, because this piece will slide in through here and then be bolted through the bottom of the deck here. So you can't get it out unless you pop this off. And the main thing that held this onto the deck was the carry handles. There's one in the back and it goes through those holes here, but also the top of this shroud, same with the front. There's one that goes on the front. Those bolts were a little easier to access once you remove the bottom cover plate that goes there. And then the motor is held in by 4 longer bolts with washers that come in through the bottom of our housing here and hold it there. And then there are 6 T20 screws that will reattach it to the bottom of this housing. There is a specific way this goes in, as there's a spot for the wires here. I'm going to stop the camera here and I'm going to re-secure this to the bottom of this, and then we'll show you how it goes through the deck, and then how we reattach the handles, or how you even gain access to the handles to get this off to gain access. So as you can see, I went ahead and reattached the motor housing to our electrical shroud here. Like I said, there's 6 screws that go all the way around, and it basically drops into place. You just have to be able to hold it when you re-secure those. There's the 4 bolts for the actual motor into the housing, but like I said, it drops through the top of this deck here, so the only way to get the housing out is to get this whole shroud up. So when you put this back in place, it will actually also drop into place, and you can see the front handle here, you can see through to the floor there, so this just kind of confirms that it's lined back up. Same with on top. Now before I flip it over and actually attach it back to the deck, I'm going to take advantage of the handle here, because this side you can actually access right through here. The other side is a little bit more difficult, so you'll be able to see that when I get underneath it. But this bolt right here is a T30. Same for those bolts for the motor, and then the 6 that go into the housing to hold it onto there are actually T20s. Get this handle out of my way. But in order to access this side, I actually had to move the chute So we'll talk about that in a little bit here. But I don't know if we can see underneath, there's access to this one for this handle. So I'll go ahead and get that reattached and then we'll flip it over. So now that we've got it flipped back over, you can see part of the reason I reattached that handle on the one side, and there's the screw for it right there, was to basically hold that shroud down to keep this from moving, so that I could line up these 4 screws that go into the deck here. Now these are also T30 Torx head, same as the ones that hold the motor into the housing, which now you can go ahead and tighten back down. I'll continue to do this probably off camera, but now that you get the idea of how this holds onto the deck. Also, this is a good time to go ahead and reattach the front handle, carry handle right here. You can see then you have the back one there, but the front attaches underneath right here and right here, so that's a good time to do that. Now the most difficult part for me was getting access to the other screw for the rear handle, which you have to remove in order to pull out your motor housing. So you have your chute right here. I had unsecured it so that I could pull it forward slightly, because the other attachment for the handle is all the way tucked back up there beyond this drive motor for the wheels. So you basically need an extension bit to get up there. Also, that is a T30, so I use an extension bit there. But to get this chute taken off and move forward, you have a wire here that has 3 clips, and there's 3 mounting holes and screws that attach that to this. You'll need to take those off, or at least I did, to better pull it forward. And then there's actually 4 bolts that hold this. They look like this right here. This one actually goes on the rear there. So this nut is supposed to stay up in here and actually allow you to unscrew it without needing a wrench, but mine just spun freely, so I actually had to chip away some of this plastic so that I could get a wrench on it and remove it. The back goes through right there, but I need to reattach that handle before I re-secure it, and then these other T30s will go through on each side of the deck, and then there's a smaller screw that goes through that one right here, but that'll be after this gets pushed back and after you reconnect that handle. So again, I'm gonna go ahead and reconnect that off camera, but that's how you gain access through there, actually through this side. Now I had a bunch of dead grass stuck up there as well, so that was part of the struggle, but I had to clean all that out and gain access, but that's how you do that part. So like I was saying, before you can actually push the chute back into place, you need to reconnect this wiring harness. There's 3 retaining clips in total. You have to connect those before you can slide this back, because it slides under the drive axle for the wheels there. And then once that's in place, Remember, this is after you've already secured that other screw tucked way up there for the rear handle. And then you have that, and you push that back in place. You got a T30 screw that goes back into the shroud there. That's a T25. So basically you're gonna need, these are T10s, you're gonna need T10 all the way up to T30 for all of this stuff, Torx bits. And then here's that nut that I was talking about to reconnect it in the rear here. Now for these, I actually, aside from the extension bit for getting, you know, that handle up there, I had to run this off of a drill because these are all seized up pretty well, and that's part of the reason that that one just spun and kind of cracked the plastic there, is because it was stuck. So like I said, I had to chip away some of the plastic on each side in order to actually get a wrench on there, which I believe is a 13 millimeter. Let me double check here. Yeah, so it's a 13 that'll fit on that, and then while you're holding that, you can drive that in with your drill on the back side there, or if you have a ratchet with a Torx bit, that would work as well. Also be mindful when you push this back in place, there is wiring that sits behind this, so make sure that it stays tucked behind there. So I'm gonna go ahead and reattach that, and then I'll show you how to put this front end back together. So after we reconnected that chute on this side, we reconnected it in the back here, and then we reconnected it with that screw there on the other side. We can go ahead and reinstall this front piece here. We can flip it back over, and basically this is going to go in the front here. And it's really, I left all the screws sitting in there when I took it off so that I didn't lose them, but really it's just a matter of lining everything back up. And then these are all going to be T20 bits as well. And once you can kind of clip that in place, you can go ahead and use a T20 and just redo all of those screws there. So again, I'm going to do that off camera so that I can hold it here, but really you just pop it back into place, locate the screws there, line it up, and then just tighten all of those back down. And then now I had taken off this battery cover here on top, and you actually didn't have to do that in order to remove everything that we've shown so far. So like I said, after we re-secure this cover here, there's 8 screws in total, and those were all T20s. It's good to double check that you've tightened everything back down afterwards. Also, these bolts for the motor assembly and the housing that goes into the deck, you'll notice certain ones when you remove them have blue Loctite on them, so it's good practice to reapply some blue Loctite before you screw them back in and tighten them down. Obviously, before you ever even get to take any of this off, you have to remove the whole blade. And what you'll have here is a spacer. This needs to go back on. After that spacer, you have this piece here, which you can see we have our triangle and circle for holding the blade. That goes back on next here. And then you can put your blade back on to line up with those. If I can do it one-handed here, maybe not. So that goes back on, sorry, like that. And then we have our cover plate here to hold that in place, which you need to line it up. There's grooves on this that will slide over that. And then of course the bolt here. This is 18 millimeter. So if you use an 18 millimeter socket, now normally you would brace it with a piece of wood in order to both take it off and tighten it back down. Because as you see, once you get to a certain point, you'll just spin the blade if you don't support it. But you can wedge it in there and tighten that all the way back down. Like I said, I removed the battery cover. You didn't have to do that in order to do everything that we did in these steps. But if you did need to take that off, there is a plug in the wiring harness that you'll have to put back in place, that white plug there. And then when you open up this cover, there's 6 screws that go in there as well. And basically it's just a matter of lining them back up, and those are T20s as well. The next video should be me starting the mower back up. So the other thing that I didn't mention is I took this rear flap off just for easier access. If you know, you don't have to do that. I did it because I got tired of holding this while trying to unscrew those. So basically they're retained by a little snap ring. A pair of pliers, needle nose pliers, can pull those off on each side, and you can slide that out. Now when you put it back in, remember this spring here, there's actually grooves in the plastic up top here. If I can show that, basically one on each side. You can kind of see it better here. There is one over here that those springs need to go back into, otherwise this won't close on its own. I should also mention that you should do all this work with the batteries out. Now that everything is back together, I've put batteries back in it, and even though I'm indoors, we're gonna go ahead and fire it up. And there it is, all back together and functioning properly.